So why am I here on to do this video? Well, there's a lot going on in the world right now, and we all have to be aware and do our part, basically. I don't know exactly what that part is, but at least we have the conversations and all kind of get on the same page about what that conversation is and what's going on. We're probably not going to be getting much progress. So the name of this channel is called Don't Call Me Cis. If you know what cisgender is, then the conversation's already started. And if you don't, I'm going to put a little video in right now and it's going to explain it. I have redone this like twice or 3 times now because I keep going on little rants, little side tangents, and I'm losing track of, I just need to stay focused, okay? So what I'm going to do this time, I'm going to play another video of a lady who wrote a really great book, who I think can summarize an introduction to everything that's going on now that I want to talk about. And then there's there's another article of something that's happened today in Australia, which I'm going to update you with at the end as well. So I would really appreciate it if you've got the time, if you can watch till the end, and even if you've picked up one thing that's new for you that you didn't know about before, that you can talk to someone else about, that you can share the information with, that can put you on a path of awareness, at least, you know, because a lot of this, it's coming fast, really fast. And the reason that I've been drawn to even put anything up here is because I've been following this for about 10 years now, or maybe more. Initially it started with, if anyone's aware of JP, Jordan Peterson, and some issues he was having at the university campus where he was working. So he's a college professor from Canada, a clinical psychologist. I'm not going to go too much into that story right now, but that's just a quick introduction of where I started. I will go back to that later on. And I'm going to be making a series of videos because I've got so much information. I think the more information you have, the better educated you can be, and the bigger voice that you can have. And you'll feel confident to be able to talk back and say no and stand up and ask questions, which would just, it's not happening right now. And I know people want to, because nobody wants to see this going on. And it's really easy to be watching from afar, but it is coming to your doorsteps, and it might be, oh, your friend's friend or whatever it may be, and not that close connection. But you know, children is everyone's care. You know, the whole community takes to raise one child, and being part of that community, even without having children, I have to do my part. So I can help spread the word to everyone and let all the mothers and fathers out there know, and you guys go and find out in the schools what's going on, and you know, be nosy, ask people, you know, find out who your teachers are, find out everyone who is interacting with your children and what they're teaching them and what their beliefs are and what their ideas are, because this is some crazy radical shit going on that's been going on for years. And the culmination of it all is coming to a tipping point that of no return very soon. But there is hope, right? I sit here, sometimes I feel so sad, really sad, like helpless even at times. And I don't want to feel helpless. I don't want to feel hopeless, because there's hope and there's help. And I know the majority of people have common sense that this is madness. Absolute madness, but politeness or fear of being cancelled, or who's going to cancel me from what? I'm going to say a lot of things and people are not going to like them. That's not new. I've always been that way. I don't have the same views as the majority of people a lot of the time. I don't see a problem with that. We can all have different opinions. When it comes to children, I've got a big problem with that. Massive problem. So, and everyone needs to get on board. All right, let's start.
Cisgender, I'm a little confused. Putting it in simple terms, a boy born a boy who feels they are a boy, or a girl born a girl who feels they are a girl. And I know what you're thinking. People are like, wait, isn't that just being normal? We don't want to use the word normal, right? Because then people that are non-binary or trans, they might feel a little bit bad about themselves. So why don't we just give everyone a title? Cisgender, you identify with your gender assigned at birth. You're not genderqueer. That's what cisgender is. Anyway, I hope this helps. What is cisgender? I'm a little confused.
Oh, and I'll put one more. It's a really short video of a good comedian. I don't know if you like this guy, but he explains what cisgender is. So yeah, you can take his point on it.
This is from a couple of years ago. Norm Macdonald, one of our greatest modern comedians, who unfortunately passed away about 2 years ago. I just love Norm. Met him a couple of times. Here he is a couple of years ago talking about this new woke term, cisgender. And the point, guys, again, you just have to be able to laugh at their nonsense.
You know that you are a cis male? Have you ever heard of that term?
A cis male?
Cis male. CYSMALE. So what it means is that you are a man. You're born a man.
Well, as far as you know.
As far as I know. And you identify yourself as a man.
Yes.
That's a cis male.
Now, I don't understand. Where does that... Is this a new phrase?
Yes, it's a way of marginalizing a normal person. So you're a cis male.
What does a cis male mean?
This other person's a trans. So you're equal. She's a man that thinks she's a woman. You're a man that thinks you're a man. It's completely
so everyone's
equal.
It's all fluid.
Yes, everyone is self-identifying.
Guys, the point is, it's all ridiculous. We can use their language. We can try to just respond to them. Or, what do I always say? We can build new things. We can fight back effectively. We can separate from them. We can elect better politicians. And it just, at the end of the day, it's all on us.
All right, so that first clip was from LGBTQ person explaining that we have to now become this new term that they've coined and created to make them feel comfortable. So we validate trans people and they're women, but we're cis women. And there's so many videos just off this. Okay, I can show you so many. Are just so condescending and hilarious in one way, but really sad at the same time, because people are just parroting this same speech rhetoric that they've been taught or been told. They all say the same words. They all just repeat the same thing. They all have the same type of speech pattern. Even it's weird. It's weird. It's really culty. It's indoctrination from a young age again, and yeah, it's just this tribal group that they feed each other with this nonsense that makes no sense, and really feel empowered by it and really feel hard done by the rest of us. So what I'm talking about will be explained coming up, and I will show you more videos to explain what I'm talking about, because I don't want to go do this tangent thing where I'm just talking about this and then going over here and then there's no reference, right? So here's the reference. I'm gonna put this video on now. It is a little longer, but I think it covers pretty much everything. And it gives us something to, so it gives us a little bit of a history, and I'll bring us up to the now as well, and what's currently going on, what we can do for Australia especially. And I'd love to know your thoughts as well from everybody. If you agree with this, do you know anyone who's been affected by this? Has there been stuff happening at schools where the kids are going? Have they been bringing in new things? Like, I don't know, I'm not sure what's happening in the school system everywhere in Australia, because I don't have kids here. It isn't as well publicised. It is. I've got some good sources and websites and groups that I will recommend and put links to as well, so you guys can get your own information. But for the most part, I don't know what's really happening in school. I will hear about it soon, because there's going to be some big cases happening of all the atrocities created and the mess we have to clean up. And I don't want that, I don't want that. So if we've all got eyes there and in the schools and around, protecting our kids and protecting the changes they're making to laws and the restrictions they are creating, or new policies or whatever it may be, anything that's been changed without your consent, without you being asked, without you being told, we need to really be aware of these things because they've been happening so quickly, so effortlessly, I want to say, to some extent, behind the scenes by whoever's pulling the strings. And I don't want to get too angry with the young people who are reciting a lot of this. And firstly, for the victims, for the children. I do believe in the universities it's really, really bad as well. You're going to see a lot of this because I'm going to show you lots of videos to match it as well. And because it's ridiculous, it's crazy. And I don't know if it's too late for the older ones, but it's definitely not too late for the younger ones. No, not at all. The older ones, they might get it when this whole thing breaks down because it's nonsense. There might be, something that happens then, but who knows? That's thinking too far ahead. But so that video was introducing what is cis. Basically, they're calling us that, and I refuse to be called cis. I'm a woman, just a woman. It doesn't need any other description. It's always been woman since before time. Everyone's known you're a man, you're a woman. Why I started this, especially when I saw in parliaments everywhere here in Australia, the Prime Minister here, Julia Gillard, the bloody, what's her name? This chick from Queensland, the state senator there, the Prime Minister of the UK was a little bit better, but all of them are struggling and hesitating to answer the question, what is a woman? We all know what a woman is. The fact that this is even a question right now, that's crazy. It's crazy. And it's the fact that our officials, the top people, there's a panel of scientists, doctors. No one wanted to answer the question, what is a woman? This is embarrassing, honestly. You've done how many years of school, you're like the top of your profession, however accolade, whatever degrees you've got and how far you've gone in academia and all of that. You're going to sit there and can't answer what is a woman. It's not a trick question. It's never changed. There's been trans women. Trans women are trans women. It's totally separate. That's why it says trans and then woman. They can't just have the word. This is where it starts. So they're trying to take over the word, then claim a lot of weird things. Tell women that we can't gatekeep periods. We don't own periods. I mean, there's no other person. No other human gets periods than women or menstruate. We can't gatekeep womanhood. That's where woman comes from. Just the absurdity of it all, that we have to now cater to the feelings of people suffering with mental health illness, which is exactly what it is, because anyone who's trans, we know they're suffering from gender dysphoria. I'm not going to go too much into that because you're going to see this in a second. If you don't know what it is, it's a real thing, and it exists. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, and we all know trans people exist. Trans people are not real women though. A woman is a woman, and the more that we keep allowing that to pass, slowly, anything that means anything is gone. There's no meaning to words. There's no meaning to anything. It's like this non-binary. Now they want people to be called, you gotta respect me with my pronouns. They, them. I'm not calling they, them. You can come up with whatever arguments you want of how long it's been used in history. No one uses it though. You just bring it up now. I don't refer to anyone when I'm talking to them in my face. They, them, or the he, or the around. I'll talk to a person. I'll use their name. That's it. I don't need to use gender anything. And this thing of I'm not this and that. Look, I was the biggest tomboy out. I don't fall on a scale of total femininity. Not at all. My voice. I've been misgendered before. Who cares? Before, I'm not trans. I'm not even trying to be another gender. I've just been misgendered. I might have shaved hair sometimes. I'm more masculine. Sometimes I have bigger muscles than dudes. Whatever it may be. I don't care. My feelings aren't that hurt. I'm not that sensitive. I'm cool. I wasn't suffering with mental health issues, so that didn't play a part. And nor should I know who is suffering with a mental health issue or not. The whole world's not going to start saying, hi, I use donkey pronouns or whatever the frick people are saying these days. It's that ridiculous. Like, I'm being an idiot, but that's the point we're getting to. People can just say whatever they want and we have to accept it. This is how it is now. The world's always evolving, it's always changing. No, fuck that. The world was fine the way it was. There's space for more things, but you don't change what already exists. And you don't come and do experiments on children. That's got nothing wrong with them for the majority part. Mental health is rife right now, but you know, a lot of it's self-diagnosed as well. It's a big thing. It's massive now. Every kid has got 10 different disorders. They just get on the TikTok. TikTok is a big problem. Social media is a massive problem. It is a social contagion that it's been spread out through this, like a lot of it. And this has been proven as well. And so this video is going to give you all the facts that you can kind of go back now and have a good base to have a conversation. All right. Please.
Okay, our first speaker this morning is Abigail Schreier. She's a graduate of Columbia College and went on to earn a Bachelor of Philosophy degree from the University of Oxford and a JD from Yale Law School. She's a frequent contributor to the Wall Street Journal, and she's the author of Irreversible Damage, The Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters. It was named a best book by The Economist and the Times of London, and she'll be drawing on themes from that book in her talk today. In a recent essay on Substack, she wrote about big tech censorship of arguments that question this transgender craze. In this particular case, her subject was Amazon.com's sudden removal from its website of a book that is critical of the contemporary transgender movement. She argued that this kind of censorship has the effect of suppressing free speech, both now and in the future. As she wrote in her essay, and I'm quoting, "This is the chilling effect of censorship that John Milton called the greatest displeasure and indignity to a free and knowing spirit that can be put upon him." She continued, "When censorship is imposed by the government or the world's third largest multinational, it forbids new life like a frost." Well, we at Hillsdale happen to think the right to free speech is essential, and so to our speaker I say, welcome to the spring thaw, Abigail Schreier.
Thank you. I have to adjust this. Thank you so much for that very kind introduction, and thank you so much to Hillsdale for having me here today. So social conservatives are increasingly asked to justify why they have decided to target transgender youth as if they picked this issue because it polls well or some other such nonsense. Let me make it clear why this has suddenly become my concern. It is because in America in 2007 had exactly one gender clinic. One. Anyone care to guess how many we have now? 300. So there are now hundreds of pediatric gender clinics in the US. Planned Parenthood gives out testosterone on a first visit. Depending on the state, it absolutely gives testosterone to minors. Planned Parenthood in Oregon gives it to 15-year-old girls on their own recognizance. They don't even need a parental note. Kaiser dispenses it. So for today's teens, whether they have real or typical gender dysphoria or not, testosterone is easily available. Double mastectomy, known as top surgery, is readily available. No, they do not necessarily need parental approval, depending on the state, and they definitely don't need a therapist note. Okay, so let's talk about the transgender phenomenon. I'm going to start by walking through the major issues and claims about youth and adolescent gender transition, and we'll work our way to the big question, which is, how did we get here? How did we get to a place in which we're all supposed to pretend that the only way you know that I'm a woman is if I give you my pronouns? How did we get to an America in which a 15-year-old in Oregon can begin a course of testosterone without her parents' permission? A lot of the answer, of course, comes from the hard left, but at least one part of the answer is conservative squeamishness about issues we'd rather not deal with at all. So let's begin by dealing with it. What is gender dysphoria? Gender dysphoria, the severe discomfort in one's biological sex, is absolutely real. It's also exceedingly rare, typically afflicting roughly 0.01% of the population, and overwhelmingly males, so roughly 1 in 10,000 males, meaning nobody you went to high school with. And it typically began in early childhood, ages 2 to 4. Little boys insisting, no, mommy, I'm not a boy, I'm a girl. Boys who were insistent, consistent, and persistent in this feeling that they were in the wrong body. It is, by all accounts, excruciating. I've talked to many transgender adults, most of them biological males, and they describe the relentless chafe of a body that feels all wrong. Now, there are at least 3 separate issues I'm going to talk about today. There are the young kids who have this classic presentation of gender dysphoria, some of whom, the majority of whom, would have naturally outgrown it on their own, and historically did. Others became what we used to call transsexual adults. There's number 2, there is the social contagion currently spreading among adolescent girls, many of whom do not have typical gender dysphoria at all. And third, there are the activists and who have already begun exploiting our confusion and our sympathies in order to invade women's protective spaces and destroy women's sports. They are all very different. Okay, so the young kids. Now, traditionally, as I said, these were overwhelmingly little boys. And if left alone, meaning with no intervention either to change their name and pronouns, what we now call social transition, and no medical intervention, over 70% of these kids typically outgrew gender dysphoria on their own. Most would end up as gay men, and some would not. Some would not outgrow it and go on to be called, what we used to call transsexuals. These were not, transsexuals were not people who used to pretend they were somehow really women or were always truly female. They were just people who felt most comfortable presenting as female. I've talked to a lot of transgender adults, and they'll tell you they know that people can tell their biology is different, but their goal isn't so much to fool other people as it is to achieve a level of comfort with themselves. For many, that involves hormonal intervention and surgeries, and I've talked to several who say that hormones they took or the surgeries they underwent brought them a measure of peace. I can also tell you that they are generally holding down steady jobs and are leading good, productive lives. But today, we don't just leave kids alone who say this and let chips fall where they may, letting some kids outgrow their gender dysphoria and others to transition when they reach adulthood. Today, we decide the moment a child seems not perfectly feminine or not perfectly masculine, today we say, I know what this is. This is a trans kid. We take them to a therapist or doctor, nearly all of whom practice so-called affirmative care. That is, nearly all of whom have accepted that it is their job to immediately affirm or agree with the patient's self-diagnosis and to immediately help them medically transition. Teachers affirm young children in school, both by teaching the class that only they, the children, know their true genders, and encouraging kids to reintroduce themselves to the class with their new name and pronouns. Therapists affirm and encourage minors down this path, and even pediatricians do. And the typical next step for these kids after changing their name and pronouns to their friends and classmates is puberty blockers. Puberty blockers shut down the part of the pituitary that directs the release of hormones catalyzing puberty. The most common of these drugs is called Lupron, a drug that was originally used in the chemical castration of sex offenders. To this day, it has never been FDA approved to halt healthy puberty. Now you might ask, why would any parent or doctor do this? Why would anyone stop the puberty in a child, even a child with genuine gender dysphoria, when that child would be highly likely to outgrow the gender dysphoria if left alone? Some say because it's traumatizing to let a child go through the puberty of the sex to which they don't wish to belong. The problem of this, of course, is that in many cases, puberty does seem to have helped children overcome their gender dysphoria. But there really is no satisfying answer to why someone would do this, given that scientists have no way of predicting which children will outgrow the dysphoria on their own and which won't. But the argument that's made is that these kids can't wait. The suicide rates for the trans-identified youth and trans adults are very high, the argument goes, and so we need to get in there and start fixing them as soon and dramatically as possible. But unfortunately, there are no long-term studies that indicate that puberty blockers cure suicidality or even that they produce better mental health outcomes. There are not even good studies that show they are safe for this population long-term, nor that they are reversible. There's a big debate right now in the medical community about whether and to what extent the effects of stopping healthy puberty in adolescence is reversible if these kids later stop taking them. What we do know is that puberty blockers will block all the secondary sex characteristics, sexual maturation, and development of bone density from occurring. We do know that because of the inhibition of bone density and other risks, doctors don't like to keep a child on puberty blockers for more than 2 years. And we know that once a child's healthy puberty is arrested, placing her entirely out of step with her peers, this seems to guarantee that she will proceed to cross-sex hormones like testosterone. In studies, nearly 100% of kids who are put on puberty blockers proceed to cross-sex hormones. And we know that if a child goes from puberty blockers to cross-sex hormones, that child will be infertile. She may also have permanent sexual dysfunction, given that her sex organs never reached adult maturity, but she will certainly be infertile. So the claim that puberty blockers are safe and reversible for this population is not well-founded. And the claim that it's a neutral intervention, just a pause button, they say, without serious downsides, is simply false. We wouldn't accept this level of glib salesmanship in any other area of medicine. Okay, so those are the kids who actually have gender dysphoria. For the nearly 100-year history of diagnosing gender dysphoria, these little kids were what we were talking about when we talked about gender dysphoria. But in the last decade, that thanks in large part to social media, there's been another population that claims to have gender dysphoria. This is a population that never before had gender dysphoria in any significant numbers. In fact, before 2007, there was no extant scientific literature on their having gender dysphoria at all. Teenage girls. This is the phenomenon Brown University public health researcher Dr. Lisa Littman called rapid onset gender dysphoria. And it refers to a sudden spike in transgender identification among teen girls with no childhood history of gender dysphoria at all. Not only have the rates of these girls claiming trans identification risen dramatically in the US and all across the West, over 4,400% rise in teen girls presenting for gender treatment at the UK's National Gender Clinic, for instance. But teenage girls are now the leading demographic of those claiming to have gender dysphoria. What's going on? The answer is social contagion. One more instance of teen girls sharing and spreading their pain. There's a long history of peer contagion with this demographic, of course. We know that anorexia and bulimia spread this way. And we know that this demographic, teen girls, is in the midst of the worst mental health crisis on record, with the highest rates of anxiety, self-harm, and clinical depression we've ever seen. We know that the population who tends to fall into social contagions is the same high anxiety, depressive group of girls who struggle socially in adolescence and tend to hate their bodies. Add to that a school environment where you can achieve immediate valorization and popularity by declaring a trans identity, and of course, the delicious temptation to stick it to mom. Add further the great many trans social media influencers who can't wait to convince troubled teen girls that identifying as trans and starting a course of testosterone will cure all of their problems. And you have a very fast-spreading social phenomenon. I've spoken to families at top girls' schools that will attest that 15 or 20%, or in one case 30%, of the girls in their daughter's 7th grade class now identify as trans. When you see that, you're witnessing a social contagion in action. There is no other reasonable explanation. These teen girls are in a great deal of very real pain. Almost all of them have dealt at some point with an eating disorder or engaged in cutting or been diagnosed with other serious mental health comorbidities. And now they're being allowed to self-diagnose with gender dysphoria by a medical establishment that's decided its job is merely to affirm and agree with these girls. A medical establishment that has, with regard to trans-identified adolescents, effectively turned its doctors into life coaches. Since my book, Irreversible Damage, was published in June of 2020, more evidence than I ever could have imagined has come out indicating that this thesis is correct. You may not know the name Keira Bell. This is a young woman in the UK, very troubled in adolescence, who was rushed to transition in her teen years and came to regret it. She underwent double mastectomy and spent years on testosterone, only to realize that her problem had never been gender. She sued the National Gender Clinic in England, and back in December, the High Court of Justice examined her case and the claim of similarly situated plaintiffs, and she won. The court examined the medical protocols applied to her, protocols identical to the ones we have in America, and the High Court of Justice was horrified. It was absolutely appalled that a young girl had been allowed to consent to eliminating her future fertility and sexual function at an age when she could not have possibly gauged that loss. She had begun transitioning at 15. This case was called a landmark case in England. It was covered by the Times of London, The Economist, and even The Guardian. It was seen as a real condemnation of the effort to fast-track so many young girls to transition. And one of the things the court noted was that the clinic had been unable to show any psychological improvement in the girls it had treated with transitioning hormones. If you didn't read about the landmark Keira Bell case in the American legacy media, well, that's because they decided to pretend it didn't happen. Just as they continued to ignore or dismiss the stories of the thousands of detransitioners. These are young women who underwent medical transition and later regretted it and attempt to reverse course. A lot of these treatments are permanent, but they do what they can to try to reverse some of the effects. So in America, the teen trans phenomenon gets treated as a conservative issue. That is a political issue rather than a medical one. And so perhaps the greatest medical scandal of this decade is dismissed as a conservative preoccupation. Finally, there's a third group of people we talk about when we talk about the transgender phenomenon. And this is the group that seems to want to eradicate girls' and women's sports and protective spaces. Many or most of these proponents are not transgender themselves, but they are activist and they are energized. And they do seem to be winning. They promote dangerous bills like the Equality Act, now before the US Senate, which would make it impossible ever to distinguish between biological men and women, ever to exclude a biological male from a girl's sports team or scholarship or a woman's protective space like locker rooms and prisons. And they would do this based entirely on a male's self-identification. All that a violent male felon needs to do is announce his new pronouns and identity, and he becomes eligible to transfer into women's prison wherever such laws are found. We have these laws now in California and the state of Washington, and as you might imagine, hundreds of biological male prisoners have already applied to transfer in. For this third group, it is not enough that we create a separate unisex bathroom while preserving a women's room for women. It is not enough to have an open category for those trans-identified athletes who do not wish to be stigmatized while preserving the girls' team for biological girls. And it is not enough to keep a separate safe zone in a prison for those trans-identified biological men who might be at risk in male prison. No, they are working to abolish all women's-only spaces. They want all men to be able to self-identify their way into them, and they want to do it right now. So these three groups are very different. You have the young children, some of whom do suffer with gender dysphoria. You have the adolescent girls, most of whom are caught in a social contagion. And you have the activists, who are using the other two groups to attack women and to advance their goal of chaos and social upheaval. What these three have in common has nothing to do with real gender dysphoria. What they have in common is that they are all shrouded in gender ideology. Put another way, what they have in common is that they are all soaked in lies. Lies are told about the risks of the treatments we administer to young children, both to play down the very real dangers and to wildly exaggerate the degree to which we know medical transition to be a cure. Lies are told about the researchers and journalists who try to report on the social contagion among teen girls in order to discredit that hypothesis or to stifle its revelation. Lies are told both about the inherent dangers of eradicating women's protective spaces and rights, and to exaggerate the degree to which this is the only way to save a community from suicide. The way to think about gender ideology is that it is a sibling of critical race theory. Critical race theory goes into schools to convince white kids that they bear the original sin of their skin color. Gender ideology marches into those same schools and tells kindergartners, yes, they do this throughout the public school system in California, beginning in kindergarten, to tell preschool children that there are a great many genders. And while someone may have guessed at birth that you were a boy or a girl, only you know your true gender. Critical race theory postulates that race is the most important feature of any person, and that white people, existing as they do in a state of racial privilege, are not able to participate in a wide variety of discussions about our democracy. Gender ideology tells women, which it calls cis women, that they are not entitled to their fear or their sense of unfairness as biological men invade their protective spaces and claim their trophies and records and scholarships. In fact, women and girls can't even use the English language to describe their problem, since calling a trans woman biological male is an act of transphobic bigotry. Both of these invidious, mendacious dogmas have corrupted our schools, our universities, almost all of our legacy newspapers and magazines, the medical accrediting organizations, American Academy of Pediatrics, American Medical Association, American Psychiatric Association, Pediatric Endocrine Society, and even our scientific journals. Just to give you a sense of how far things have gone, about 8 months ago, I was contacted by a member of the National Association of Science Writers. The NASW is an association of journalists with scientific backgrounds tasked with explaining scientific phenomena to the public. And the member of the NASW who contacted me wanted me to know that a member of the online forum had been expelled for mentioning my book. I contacted the member who had been, the person who mentioned my book who had been expelled, Sean Scott, and he told me he hadn't even read my book. It just sounded interesting to him. He was immediately banned from the forum and labeled transphobic. I've heard the same thing from endocrinologists and psychiatrists and pediatricians and scientific researchers who write around these issues. If they point out the risks of gender interventions, they struggle to get their research into journals, and very often their letters to the editor pointing out flaws in studies touting all these interventions, those letters aren't published. The funding goes to research that promotes gender transition and downplays the risks. There are phalanxes of young doctors now, many of them in pediatrics or child psychiatry, who believe their primary job is social justice. And they don't hide this. They brag about it online every day. And you're starting to see this kind of thing put into practice. Perhaps America's most prestigious hospital, Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, recently announced that it would offer preferential care to patients based on race. And on questions of gender, we're seeing it with the mass celebration of transitioning treatments provided to young people by doctors who show an inexcusable complacency about the risks of these treatments. The Washington Post just last week quoted some of these young doctors and claimed that it was a factual matter that puberty blockers are fully reversible. That was the quote. Puberty blockers are fully reversible. Except that that's not something anyone can claim to know yet. They're certainly not psychologically reversible, and they may not be physically reversible either. We simply don't have the data yet. So you're seeing this startlingly quick corruption of medicine and science, and it's a symptom of a larger woke corruption of American society. Now, there's something I say every time I am asked to speak, and I say this for the simple reason that it is true. Transgender adults are some of the nicest, soberest, and kindest people I have met in my work as a journalist. They have good jobs, they have stable associations, and they are leading admirable and productive lives. They have absolutely no desire to harm women or to push transition en masse on children. The activists do not represent them. I have met adult transgender people who seem to have been helped by transition, but also a belief in freedom absolutely requires allowing adults to make really consequential decisions about their lives. Whether it's adulthood in a free society means that you can change your religion, you can change your name, you can take a dangerous job, such as Andy No and I have. And yes, you can choose to undergo sex reassignment surgery. And whenever I am asked, I am in conversation with a transgender adult, I always use their chosen name and pronouns, and I believe it speaks well of conservatives who extend this courtesy. But, and this is a big but, I never lie. So I will never say, and will never say, trans women are women. This is a dangerous lie. It's a lie which, when promoted in public, leads to unjust and even dangerous consequences for women and girls. When we lie in public, we usher in all kinds of consequences: the obliteration of women's protective spaces and the destruction of women's and girls' athletics. Parroting these lies is not mere courtesy, whatever proponents say. It's the cowardly surrender of women's welfare as a sacrifice to the woke gods, and it's wrong. In the public sphere, the lie is the harm. It does damage to our ability to communicate, to comprehend each other, and it makes it impossible to object in the face of unfairness and cruelty. If, quote, a trans girl really is just a kind of girl, after all, there is no basis for objecting to a 17-year-old boy who handily beat all the girls on the track team. Now, I'm often asked, why are the trans activists doing this? Why would a teacher tell her class of kindergartners that only they know their true gender? What could possibly be the justification for telling small boys that they might really be girls and telling small girls that they might really be boys? The biggest hint I got to the answer came from talking to detransitioners. Remember, these are young women who underwent transition and then later regretted it. Again and again, they told me that while they were transitioning, they were angry, they were sullen, and they were politically radical. They very often cut off their families. They were coached in this by transgender influencers online, and they rushed toward their new glitter families. You'll often see gender-confused people among the ranks of Antifa or at Black Lives Matter rallies. Having turned against their families of origin, they are easy prey for those who recruit revolutionaries. Put another way, the chaos is the point. Just as the point of critical race theory is to turn the American people against one another, so the point of gender ideology is to stop the formation of stable families, the building blocks of American life. Let me say this again. This is not the goal of all transgender adults, but it is the goal of gender ideology and the transgender movement, namely the creation of a new victim class eager to join the revolution. So what do we do about this? How do we push back on the onslaught of gender ideology? First, we must oppose the indoctrination of children in gender ideology. There is absolutely no good reason for it, and it does very real harm. You can absolutely insist that all children treat each other kindly without indoctrinating an entire generation in gender confusion. Second, in public, we must speak up and we must speak the truth. Always, wherever we find ourselves, at work, whatever we do, we must refuse to recite the lies. If conservatives are to confront these issues, we must know something about them. We must overcome our squeamishness. We must clearly distinguish, for instance, between transgender Americans, many of whom are wonderful, and an ideological movement which seeks to warp our children and wreck our families. This is a movement that would turn our children against themselves because its advocates know there's no greater horror to a parent. There is no quicker way to bring America to its knees than by prompting our children to do irreversible damage to themselves. The people who've been pushing this ideology, they got a big head start on us, perhaps by a decade, but they have awakened a sleeping giant. The success of my book, the fact that I was invited to speak to you today, and the state legislators that are now debating these issues testify that a cultural battle is at last being fought. We cannot afford to lose. These are our kids and grandkids. Our future literally depends on our winning this. Thank you.
Okay, so if you're still here, then you watched that. Thank you, I appreciate it. And yeah, let me know your thoughts, how much you knew about this, what's new. Let's start the conversation. I'm going to read out an article now, and I'm going to put in some links where this came from and the website as well. I think they're a really good organisation to stay up to date with what's happening in Australia, especially. All right, I think I'm probably going to leave it there after that, and then I'm going to work on the other stuff just so it's not too much at once. The other ones will be a lot shorter. I'm thinking to try and keep it under half an hour because yeah, I know everyone's got stuff to do, and you don't always have even half an hour free to watch something. So if you've done this, I appreciate it. I think it's really important, and talk to people about this stuff. The next one I'm going to bring, the next video I'm going to do, which I think is really important as well, just because it's something that we need to address here, especially right now. It has been addressed overseas already, and I'll bring that type of stuff up, is the literature that they've got in schools now for primary school kids and for high school students as well, and what they're teaching them. Even like the World Health Organization's structure for sex ed for children is really disturbing. And I don't know how many people know, censorship is as high as it's ever been right now for the modern world anyway. You really can't dispute certain things. Whatever WHO says, that is facts. No one can dispute it ever. You can't say anything against that because it's misinformation. When did this become a thing that social media, TV, media has always controlled the narrative. Social media, we'll be able to talk and say our own opinion. Even an opinion, you can't put your own opinion on there anymore. It's illegal. It's not valid. How is that? It's misinformation. And once we go down that hole of controlled speech, what we can't say, what we must say, especially, you know, where do we draw the line of what someone finds offensive, or what you deem or decide to be hate, or what you deem or decide to be truthful. So someone's lived experience is no longer true, and it cannot be discussed or be publicly promoted because it contradicts some story that they're saying is the official story. I don't think that's right. This is really, really dangerous ground. I mean, we already know that the story that's been given to us from media moguls and the rest of it is quite funneled, you know, and it's very specific. They pick and choose what they want to tell us, how they want to tell us, what they're going to show us. And the great thing about social media in today's day and age is that we have the freedom now to peer share with each other information, stories, photos, all the good stuff as well. But who dictates what comes out of our mouths? When they start trying to do this, this is a problem that everybody needs to be aware of. You might not be saying something right now, but you put it in for one thing, and it's going to keep going. Where, you know, it's the same thing as this. We keep accepting this woman. Everyone's a woman. What does woman mean then? You know, there's no distinction between the things, and we should be able to discuss this as well, and not being called, you know, you're a homophobe or you're a TERF, a transphobe, because you don't have the same opinions. And a lot of even if it wasn't based in science, you can't shut down a conversation that way, and it has been done a lot lately, and in this cancel culture and the rest of it, which I think is ridiculous. People are going to say things you don't like all the time. You're going to be offended. Again, I've heard people say this, but it's so true. You know, being offended is a choice. You can choose to be offended or not. And then where does your offense stop? This one, you think I'm misgendering you, and it's intent. I might be saying something and you're taking it the wrong way. Well, that's on you. It's not on me. So I have to be punished now because you misread my intentions or misread what was going on, or because your insecurities or your mental health problem is having a miscommunication. Yeah, that's where the problem is, over there. It's not over here. So none of us need to change anything that we're doing. Not everyone's the nicest people. You don't have to be. As long as you're not actually infringing on somebody else, like you're not doing physical harm to somebody, you're not going out of your way to threaten their lives or you know, or make them, not doing any physical harm or verbal threats. Now, I mean like threatening with violence, right? Not telling someone that you don't like their race or you don't like whatever. People can say and do that. It's always been the way. Not everyone's going to like you. Not everyone's going to love you. You'll be lucky to have one or two people even, you know. So this entitlement that every person that you come across needs to treat you with kindness, and if they don't treat you the way you want to be, if they don't treat you the way you think you should be treated, it's a punishment. There's a punishment that goes with that. Who gets to call that? I call that. I don't like the way that they're treating me right now. You know, I don't like being pushed in a corner in silence and I can't say what I want to say, but I will. No, I'm not going to do that. I don't care what the repercussions are. I'll say how I feel. I mean, who knows if this video even goes out? Maybe there's going to find something on it and it's going to be taken off. I don't know why, because I haven't said anything bad about anyone, because I've got nothing bad to say about anyone. But that's me. All right. Anyway, I was trying to keep this under an hour. I don't think I've gone over. But thanks for sticking by, and yeah, stay tuned. All right, I'm going to read the article now too. We have an organisation here in Australia. It's called Binary. You can Google it, and it's going to come up straight away. They, as far as I know, well, I don't know too many other groups right now. So if anyone knows some other activists trying to save the kids here for the good fight, please let me know. More information, the better. Let's share what we have. Any stories out there as well, anything that's happening in the schools with the kids and stuff, please share. And let's just have this discussion. All right, here we go. So other countries like United Kingdom and Sweden are pulling back from controversial puberty blockers and body mutilating surgeries for children. But in Australia, it's full steam ahead. Governments here, instead of bringing in new laws that fast-track children on this dangerous path, governments here are instead bringing in new laws that fast-track children on this dangerous path. New South Wales is the latest state intending to pass this conversion therapy ban. The problem is that these new laws will make it illegal for parents to do anything other than affirm a child's request to change gender. Doctors like child psychiatrist Julian Spencer have reported on the extremely negative effect laws like these in other states in Australia are having on the quality of care provided to children with gender dysphoria. Because most of them don't have proper gender dysphoria that's going to go over with them to adulthood. Most of them get rid of it. It goes, you know. I had it when I was young. Oh yeah, it would have been way easier to be a boy. But I'm so thankful I'm a girl. Like, thank God no one ever gave me that option. I would hate to think what my life would be like now, you know. Okay, this unfortunately, experts are warning that these so-called conversion therapy laws will in fact increase the number of young people who undergo gender transitions. Of course, duh. That unfortunately also means that more and more children will regret their transition after it's too late. We can't let these laws pass in New South Wales. We can make a difference. Now, these guys are lobbying and fighting against everything. There's a book coming out. If you do want to donate, go ahead. Please use the resource and find that information for yourself. I think it's really great. But yeah, definitely you do that. All right. I'm going to definitely be getting into a lot of the detransitioners. These guys have been completely silenced and shut down from the trans debate and from the trans LGBTQI. Once they detransition and have made mistakes and all of the atrocities and horrors have been done, they want nothing to do with them anymore. No, you're false, you're fake, you're putting back the movement, they tell them. So they'll all open arms while they said, yeah, I'm trans. And then once they realize like there was other mental health issues and they made a mistake, totally ostracized, and it's actually disgusting the way that these people have been treated from their group. I'm going to bring on some stories of those because there's so many. There are so many, but you're going to see it now. And this, 10 or more years ago, it was more than 10 years ago actually when I first saw the first trans children. Innately, I just knew that I'm like, this is bad. This is really, really bad. This is terrible. And I knew that wait and see. No child can say, oh yeah, kids say everything. I want to be a fire truck. I want to be a dinosaur. I want to do whatever. Like, the imagination it's crazy, you know? Like, that's like kids be whatever they want to be. Who cares? Dress up in this, dress up in that. It changes all the time. I don't know how many times you change your mind throughout your life even. And something so permanent should not be in. This is just nuts. Anyway, let me go. I'm sure you've got things to do. And stay tuned and we shall chat soon. Okay. Look forward to hearing from people's thoughts and stuff in the comments. All right. Hey, how's it going? Okay, so I'm just going to actually add one more video. It's actually Jordan Peterson. In the beginning of the video, I said this is how my journey had started, which was something that really put something in my head that alerted me to a possible danger, which has not gone away for a long time now. And now you've got a little bit more context about the stuff. I'll just put this really short clip in so you can see it, and then I'll end it there. And stay tuned for the next video. I'm in an argument whether I was even going to post this, and I just decided not to, because I saw some kind of wins in the media and stuff, and then things have gone backwards again. So I'm posting this now. I've decided I'm going to do it, and yeah, let's go on this journey together and hope for some positive light. I also want to say, disclaimer, I am part of the LGBT community, whatever. I'm a B in the LGBT. Trans people, I don't mean no hate or harm to anybody. I've got nothing bad to say about anyone, their life choices, their lifestyle, or how they live. This is about children and also about freedom of speech. These are two of my big issues. And I've got many trans friends. I'm going to go through my own stories, my own personal stories about things that have happened. I've been around I've had trans friends for over 20 years. So I think some of the young ones now are talking probably not even that age or close to. So a longer history of how these things can turn out and begin than a lot of people who just are deciding that they are trans. I've got many trans friends, many. I lived in Thailand for a long time. In Australia as well. I've got many friends here currently, previously. So for those that, think you don't have a right to say something, well, I've got a right to say something. I'm a woman and I can speak in that space. When it comes to trans, I have personal experience as well with people currently, some past and some still with us, that I think contradicts the main narrative that people are saying now. All right, that being said, I'm done, okay? I'm going to shut up and I'm going. Have a wonderful, blessed, great day, guys. And this is one part of life. So no doom and gloom. Always nice to end on a higher note. And I've got a little surprise for you. Got a surprise for you. It's a national treasure from the NT, and an artist that you can find on YouTube. And yeah, you're welcome. That'll make your day.
Somebody wants to be called Z or Zer. Why not?
I don't care what people want to be called, that's fine, but that doesn't mean I should be compelled by law to call them that. The government has absolutely no business whatsoever, ever, governing the content of your voluntary speech. Like, I don't even like hate speech laws. I think they're a big mistake. And that says what you can't say, right? This is what you have to say. That's a whole different ballgame.
So you were personally willing to accommodate people if they want to be called something odd?
We could have a conversation about that, and if I was convinced that you knew why you were asking that was actually in your best interest, and you weren't just attempting to exercise ideological control over me for reasons that had absolutely nothing to do with you personally, then I might consider it in my private conversation, just like I would if you asked me to use a nickname, for example. So, but there's a big difference between privately negotiated modes of address and legislatively demanded compelled speech.
So somebody wants to be called Z.
You ought to get yourself a world record, mate. Gotta get one before it's too late. Put it on your bucket list. It's an opportunity not to be missed. 'Cause if you're looking for some satisfaction, it'll give you a good reaction. Knowing that you've done your personal best, something that's better than Doesn't matter what you do, there's a world record out there waiting just for you. Grab a stopwatch and a witness or two, and someone to check it so we know that it's true. Then you'll be free to tell the people you meet all about your marvelous feat. You ought to get yourself a world record, mate. Gotta get one before it's too late. Put it on your bucket list. It's an opportunity not to be missed.
How good is that? How good?